Do you guys see that? Woot woot, Hawaii. Do you see that? No, I don't have two new kittens. I saw this on Pinterest and almost lost my mind. Um, if I had a real Christmas tree, it would be a skinny little thing like this. And if I had two kittens, I could see this happening. So I just think that's ridiculous. And I absolutely love it. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I hope you're all nestling into the holidays, Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa. I mean, there's so many different groups that are celebrating the season in their own special way. And I love that. I just love that completely. So, all right, get some people on here. Okay, today we're going back to Houston before we go through some stuff here. And Lilo got a good interview with the American Quilt Study Group. Remember, we talked to Lisa Erlandson right before Houston, and she's a quilt historian. She's been on the show many, many, many times. And it was kind of an interesting exhibit, I will tell you. We've got some polyester in there. So here, I showed Janet's BOM on Monday, and I couldn't find. She gave me the information, and then of course I lost it. What else is new? So actually, the quilting on this is spectacular. And she got back to me, and it's Lisa Ardent that did the quilting. I always want to shout out to the long arm quilters, machine quilters, because as Ricky and I both feel so strongly, is that can make or break a quilt, just period. So Janet, thank you for getting back to me, and Lisa, beautiful, beautiful job. Okay, so then Patty sent me this. She finished it, and this was something that we did during the pandemic, and she made it for her granddaughter. And look how she put the little bird feeder in and the little branch. I more than adore it when you take something and twist it with your own voice. And you know what, too? I want that kitten. Okay, Patty, I miss my cat. I've got cat on the mind. When we get back from Hawaii early next year, I'm debating one or two. That's what I'm at right now. I know for sure I'm not going to get a dog, and I had to really think that through because we have had a dog, and I love Lizzie. So, okay, then not Ricky Timms, another Ricky sent this to me, and this is from her late husband's ties. And so I remember early on somebody was asking, could you do something like New York Beauty or whatever? Yep, here it is, right here. Yes, you can. And then Sue Rapp, who comes to my retreat every single year, she found this. Shoot, Sue, you can say where you found it, but look at this for as far as succulents go. I love this. This may be the most favorite succulent thing I've ever seen. And I'm sitting here like you looking at it. I'm wondering, those must have been on logs, wooden logs, concentric or something. I don't know, but that is spectacular. Sue, hey, Sue, thank you. Thank you for sending that. Love, love, love. Okay, the show that's airing right now is with Amy Pabst. And Amy, I did a one of these things with her, and she works in all different kinds of materials. And she's a log cabin queen. Let me see her book right over here. I can grab it. No, I don't see it right here. Her work is spectacular. And as she shows her work, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And if I remember correctly, got to watch the show, you guys. The show is 3312. I think she said this. Boy, I'm not going to tell you 100% she said it, but I'm going to say 98% she said this. I want to leave a little inch there for forgiveness if I have it wrong. That she puts both monopoly in the top and the bobbin. That whole bobbin thing scares the heck out of me. So I would stick with my 80 weight. But when you see what she does, it will blow your mind if you haven't watched the shows already. So like, let's take a look. Whoops. Let's take a look at this particular quilt of hers. Okay, that got itself a second place. Okay, what got first place? At Paducah. I love their ribbons. And that ribbon kind of gives you an idea of the magnitude of the smallness of it. All right? I got a close up of it. I mean, her work is impeccable. I might guess and say those are 1 inch, maybe. I don't have a ruler in front of it, but I'm pretty sure on the show, and I know when I did the thing with her on this vidcast, I would put coins on it so that you would have an idea. So George Siciliano, and Siciliano or Siciliano, I couldn't, I'm forgive me, George. He is also a maven and a king of miniature. So let's look at this. And so what do we see that? That's 12 inches, people. 12 inches. I met him one year at Paducah, and his work just, like Amy's, just blows my mind. And he reminded me, and again, George, I don't know how you got hold of me. I don't know whether it was through instant message or whatever. There's too much technology. That the foundation that Amy uses is his product. So you might want to check that out if you want to even venture into that world of itty bitty bitty, right? Let's see. Hey, Sue. Okay, then at the top of the show, I talked about you guys. Yes, I did. I talked about our embroidery class that we did during COVID. And then what I didn't show you then, because I hadn't gotten to it yet, is the two things I use to fill the centers. And I teach that on the show. And again, that's in the first segment. And one is kind of a little gridded thing that you put little stitches on top of to tack it down. And another one is a kind of a spider web woven thing. It's the bottom right. I grabbed this. The reason it's fuzzy is I grabbed it from the trailer yesterday. So I'm really, really, really gotten into this embroidery, as you know, and I'll show you what I'm working on right now. And we're thinking we're going to kit it. And this is going to be the next project. Here's the problem, and we're probably going to take a survey on if you're interested in this. The good news with wool is that it is absolutely glorious to work with. The bad news is that it can get kind of costly. And so as you buy your threads, whatever you have left over and your wool, you just put it into a pot and then you have it for projects down the road. But what I'm wondering is this something you guys would be interested in doing? Because I don't want to, get a bunch of kits and then, we can't do it. And we're thinking about offering the kits with the thread in one pot, and then a thread, and then the wool in another pot. Okay, and then Lori just asked, John, Suzanne, I have a question about the shop. My daughter, not a TQS member nor a quilter, would like to get me a gift certificate for the TQS shop, but I don't see anything on the shop site. Yes, it is absolutely possible. Write to me, ALEXANDRSN @gmail, and I will get somebody who can help her out with that. I can't think of a better present for a quilter, honestly. I can't think of a better thing. So you guys like this? You say, yeah, we're gonna do this. It's an extension of what we were doing with the silk embroidery in my book. All right, so I went to Etsy. I actually went to Etsy to see if I could figure out how I'm going to finish this little gnome guy. And I found something so wonderful. I'm so excited. I am so scared to trim this. I can't stand it, but it is going to be so stinking cute. You're going to love it. If I don't say so myself. But as I was in Etsy, the ultimate, okay, Here we go. This project is nothing I can do. I'm allergic to wool. Well, then, Kristen, you're going to have to do it with fabric. God, that would, I don't like to wear wool sweaters because I itch, like that, but thank goodness. Oh, I'm so sorry for you, Kristen, because man, it is glorious. So I went to Etsy to look on how I might finish this little wool project. I will tell you, I layered it with batting, backing, and started quilting it, and it looked horrible. I tried quilting by machine, looked horrible. And I think it's the batting was the issue, but do now. I'll share that with you. So when I was on Etsy, I stumbled on a couple things, and you could do this with ties, people. You could do this with ties. I just thought this was so cute, and I'm not one to love the ties staying in tie shapes, tie form, but this really, really, really caught my eye. And then because my daughter-in-law is from Israel and they celebrate Hanukkah, I, I I couldn't believe it when I ran into this. Oh, I hope this is the one. I couldn't believe it. Look at that. Spools of thread for a menorah. Oh my gosh. And if you get on Etsy and you start Googling quilt menorahs, you will be amazed at what you come up with, what it comes up with. This is what I grabbed before. The spools just shut it down. That was it. So look at this. It's freeform piecing and stuff like that. Super, super fun. Okay, so Lilo and Justin did it again, and we're going to take you to Houston to see the American Quilt Study Group display. It's again polyester. Ah, here we go.
Hi, we're at the International Quilt Show in Houston, Texas, and we are with Lisa Erlandson and Nancy Bevor from the American Quilt Study Group. And we are so excited to learn about the exhibition that you have curated. There's a lot about the American Quilt Study Group that you may not know, that they don't focus just on quilts from 150 or more years ago. So we're standing here in front of this lovely flower basket. Tell us about this quilt, which will surprise everyone.
Well, first of all, you're right. We don't just care about 19th century quilts. We care about all quilt-related studies, all genres, all periods. This one is actually from the 1970s. Lisa?
You've seen this pattern, I'm sure, before done in cotton, and I know you can tell on the camera that it just glows, and it's double knit polyester.
Oh my gosh, I remember those days.
I know, and look, it's much better in a quilt than wearing. So we're very fortunate. This is part of a collection of double knit polyester quilts that one of our members, Kathy Glover, has. She collects these and is interested in them, and she has graciously allowed us to borrow some for this exhibit. And it's a little different than you would think. You see hexagons from what, early 1800s, and this one is from the 1970s.
Right. And is this
so
owl
different.
made out of clothing? Because that's a lot of gold in that background.
I think she probably bought the gold to be the background, but the others might have been scraps that were left over from something she made. But the thing about these double knit polyester colors is they just glow, sometimes in the dark. I mean, they are colors not found in nature, most of
Right.
them. And it's just so vibrant. And when you compare it to some of the ones that are done in cotton, they seem kind of like a pale imitation.
Now, I haven't made a quilt out of polyester, so is it fussy to work with?
Oh,
I mean,
no.
as far as cutting, there's no fraying and any of those sorts of things you have to deal with?
No, there's no fraying, and in fact, they're often not quilted. They're often just stitched, and sometimes not even backed because they're so heavy anyway.
Now, I do remember that sleeping under one when I was a child.
And you can see this one is tied, which was a wise choice, rather than quilting all of the little hexagons. And we do have some in the exhibit. We can't see everything, but we do have one other double knit that is hand quilted,
Oh
and
my
maybe two that are
gosh.
hand quilted. And I can't imagine how many needles would you have dulled to do that, but it's really great, and tied is fine. it's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's really spectacular.
And if it looks heavy, I think it is.
And it would be definitely a heavy lap
Mhm,
quilt.
mhm.
And so, where would we be looking for something like this if we were thinking, oh, let's collect 70s quilts?
I think Kathy has dealers who help her find things. I think she finds them on eBay, finds them online, local antique stores or vintage shops. She probably doesn't want to give away all of her secrets or have too
Absolutely.
much competition.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kathy.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go look at another interesting quilt that we would not be expecting.
Great,
necessarily.
thank you.
Thanks. Okay, this is a spectacular piece right here. Tell us about this quilt.
Well, I can tell you a little bit more about it than some of the others because this is from my collection. And I collect, one of my collection interests are quilts with names and dates on them. And so this quilt was made by Esther White in 1846. How do I know that? Because she put a label on her quilt, people, way up at the top. We can't read it, we can't really see it, but she put that on there. And so I know a little bit about that and was able to start doing some research on the names to find out who had, who had signed it, why did she make it. We still don't know that. She didn't tell us that.
But it's not just that she worked on it. She had friends that worked on it.
Well,
as well.
I can't tell if the work is very consistent. So she could have made all of them, but it looks like there are different hands involved with the signatures, with the names.
Right, because you can see, obviously, and I can't read some John Kerr.
Yeah, J.K. White,
Right.
Elisha White. And, you would think, it's like, hey, all I have to look up is Esther White from
That's gonna be no
Pennsylvania.
problem.
That's no problem. Okay, here's what I did. You can't look up Esther White. There's a billion of them, even in 1846. So what I did, I learned from the American Quilt Study Group, from some of our members, you look at the most unusual name.
Because there's less people with an unusual name than there is White.
So I looked up, the last name was still White, but I think, let me look. I can't find him now, but it was something like Wellington or something. I look, sure enough, he's got a sister named Esther, and all of these other people are on it. And guess what? They're not from Pennsylvania. They're from Ohio. So I was given incorrect information, but they're like close to Pennsylvania. They were Quakers. And I was able to find a relation between most of the people on the quilt. Some I'm still working on. I think, I don't know, maybe it was a friend, a neighbor, but one of the not last name White people on the quilt, I wondered, what's he doing on there? Oh, because the next year he married Esther's sister. So he was a sweetheart.
So we can assume that the men's names, and they don't mean that they necessarily worked on the quilt, but they were family members or relations in some way.
Correct.
Because she did all the work on it. Is even the quilting consistent so that
yes.
you then know
I think
it's
this
one
was
hand
her.
that did.
Yeah, I think this was her quilt, and she was young when she made this, probably 18, 19 years old. And so this, it wasn't her first quilt. Obviously, she was accomplished,
quite skilled.
but it was a fad to make quilts with and have people's names on them, kind of like an autograph book, but we did it with quilts. And so I don't know if that's why she made it. I don't. She didn't tell us that, but it was just something. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I have a question for you because, as you were saying, these name-inscribed quilts, they're also sometimes called signature quilts, but they aren't always different signatures. Sometimes they're the same hand, but they're just putting names on the quilt. So name inscribed is a good term, I think, Lisa, that you've come up for this. They were very popular as those East Coast families were leaving for the West, and by that, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana. So I'm wondering if this is created with kind of a more Pennsylvania aesthetic, yet the family ended up in Ohio, and that's where you found them. And 1840s, that's when all those states were opening up and becoming states, and people moving around.
And then a question for those that are maybe looking at this is that I noticed that the border doesn't continue all the way around? Why is there not a piece of work done across the top?
Well, I think anybody who's made half square triangles, at some point you just say, that's enough.
True.
No, I think this was made, for a larger bed, and the three sides that hang down have the half square triangles, the sawtooth edge, and the part that is at the top, which is the top because that's where the right side up letters go, was possibly under a pillow cover or something else. And so she just said, well, why do the work for that?
Right, yeah.
And that's not uncommon.
Yeah, and what I also noticed is how clear and defined the signature areas are. Because there's a quilt that's next to us that has signatures as well, but they have faded quite a bit, where these are quite clear. And so, they didn't have the archival pens that we have of today. They were using whatever ink, I'm assuming, that they had handy. But you had mentioned that it may be
so they use
two
different kinds of inks. One, a regular ink that they would write letters with, and I think that's what this is what they're using here, and that tends to last. And then there was another ink made from oak galls, where you would grind up those galls that form on oak trees and make a paste out of that. And the quilt that's next to us that we aren't going to see, I think they used oak gall ink for that because some of that is faded. It tends to be a little brown, like an oak gall, as opposed to the India inks that are used here. And today, I think we want to use Pigma pens.
Right.
They're archival. They're pretty.
Whatever we have that right now, we feel really confident about.
And they
Yes.
say
Staying.
archival.
Correct. So make sure you sign your quilts, put your name on it, and that you sign it with an archival pen.
And
Yes.
tell people why you made the quilt. Esther, come on. If Esther would have just said, I made this quilt to commemorate becoming an adult at whatever age, moving to Ohio, because the family was going to start marrying off, whatever,
Right.
or because my friends were all making one too, and I had to do it. And I really think that's a lot of what we see in this time period, and maybe now. That's why I've made quilts before. My friends were all making that pattern, so I wanted to do it.
Right. Now, speaking of pattern, now let's go look at another quilt that would surprise us a little bit, because it's from an area, but it doesn't necessarily look like what we're expecting. Let's go over there. So, Nancy, you told me when we were deciding on which quilts we wanted to talk about that this is actually an Amish quilt, which when I first saw it, I thought, well, it doesn't look like the Amish quilts that I've read about. So I think this is a really interesting story.
I think when we think about Amish quilts, most of us are familiar with the Lancaster County, Pennsylvania Amish quilts, the large square and a square, large solid, lots of quilting, very dark colors.
And this is a really bright blue.
This is a bright blue in part because those that we think of were late 19th century. They were using mostly natural dyes. These are using some 20th century from 1920, 1930 synthetic dyes. And it is actually from Indiana. And as the Amish moved west from Pennsylvania to Ohio and Indiana, they weren't quite as strict on the color sense. And so they also did more block style format like this one,
Right.
more pieced quilts with more pieces, still beautiful, exquisite quilting, but a little bit bolder color sense.
She was maybe a little bit of a rebel in her
Well,
in her group.
I don't know that she was more necessarily a rebel. I just think the the rules were a little bit more relaxed.
More relaxed in the newer areas, yeah, because it's a stunning quilt, and it's got beautiful hand quilting all around it. But it definitely did not read as an Amish quilt when we first came.
It is all solid. There are no prints. But what I love is the applique border. All those points are appliqued on. They're not pieced.
Oh, wow.
And that's a little bit unusual, both for an Amish and for the Midwestern quilts.
Oh, wow. And what time period? It's at 1930s.
So 1930.
1930s time period. So this is a not necessarily contemporary quilt like the 70s we saw, but not as old as what we have been seeing from.
Kind of a bridge.
Kind of a nice little bridge. So there are more quilts in this collection. Can you just give us a real quick brief about what was it that you used as your criteria to decide when selecting, because there are so many wonderful quilts in this.
Well, I think I had my criteria, and Lisa and I kind of agree. Lisa had hers. I
No,
think
it was like this.
yeah,
It wasn't like this.
no, it was
Yes,
not. It was not. Two heads are definitely better than one.
exactly.
I wanted to show some commonalities between the 19th century, early 20th. So we have log cabins that cover 150 years. We have hexagons, one you saw earlier. We
Right.
have an Amish hexagon behind you that I'm sorry people can't see, from the late 19th century. And we have a mid 19th century hexagon quilt that has signatures, that's Lisa's. So we had, pattern commonalities. We also have collectors who focus on a particular geographic area. One is New York State, one is Pennsylvania, and so we have a group of quilts that kind of represent that. And then Lisa's wonderful collection of name inscribed quilts that form a body. We have some African American quilts that show, what different cultures were doing. We have a group quilt, and some of these name inscribed quilts are group quilts. Where different people make them. Sometimes they're made by the same person. So we have these kind of themes that we try to have running through the
Yeah.
exhibition.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about joining the AQSG, because we've already had several interviews. We had one with Lisa Erlandson earlier, and Nancy as well with Alex. So you can go in and go check those out on our YouTube channel. But for somebody who's not aware, nugget, why do they want to join AQSG?
If you are curious about quilts, if you are curious about quilt studies, if you want to learn more, if you love to read, research quilts, anything involving the word quilt or fabrics, then you need to be a member of the American Quilt Study Group, because we encourage the learning and the sharing of knowledge. And you don't have to be the smartest quilt person around, because you join and you learn. People are so generous with what they know, and they love somebody to come up and say, tell me why, how would I know that's Amish? And you've got people that we point to and go, oh, they're the Amish person, Amish expert person,
Right.
go talk to them. And people are so generous to share with others, and
Right.
so we want to continue to do that. AmericanQuiltStudyGroup.org is our website.
All right. So thank you so much for sharing all that you have. Highly recommend that you come and check out the exhibition and check out the website, because it would be definitely worth your while.
And thank you for having us.
Yes.
Lots of good stuff on the website.
It's always interesting to me let me say this, when I first started quilting, I didn't care so much about the history, and now it's just like my heart place. Lori, I'll answer you in a moment, and welcome. On that Amish quilt, I'm going to say two things about it. Number one, was it yellow or was it beige? I don't know. But I saw that particular quilt as incredibly striking. And that is where I go get my influences from if I want to make a traditional quilt. So it's never a waste of time to go study historical quilts and see what sparks your interest, okay? And then as far as Lori M., welcome. And I believe you're talking about this menorah little quilt. Maybe if I had said it was on Pinterest, it might have been easier to find. So let's say, and I don't have the name, I'm sorry. I guess I really don't understand Pinterest, in as much as if the name was there, I would have shared it, yes. But if you can't find a pattern, this is what I would do. I would go Google line drawings of spools, and I would get it the size you want, and then just make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just make enough, and then do the little candles, and there you go. You don't need a pattern for this. I mean, if there is one, yay. But I would say again, go to Pinterest. You guys keep me honest here. Sorry. Hey, Lori, that's just part of the game. You're dealing with Alex Anderson. Okay, so Monday, no, Saturday, Dee's going to do another Christmas block, and I know you guys are enjoying that big time, same place. And then Monday, I have been waiting for this. C&T has come out with the Essential color card deck. And I know we all have this, and if we don't, that's a good present to have people give you for the holidays. It's by Joan Wolfram. But C&T came out with a card deck, and I went to C&T, and Amy shows us how to use it. When I first saw it, I thought, okay, whatever. And then at Houston, when I saw her interviewing it, I said, oh my gosh, we got to get up. We got to do a video on this for people to see. It's very, very clever. And it's all rooted in Joan Wolfram. Okay. And then who's a friend of mine. And then the other thing is, I did a podcast a while back. And in fact, Terry Lucas, I lost where you texted me or whatever. It was a super fun podcast. It is on my Alex Anderson professional Facebook. It's also going to be in the TQS newsletter this Friday, Mary Kay says. So claim your own space. I've got to go listen to it again. I mean, I do these things and it's, in my rear view mirror, but I do remember that one going, these are some very, very good questions that are being lobbed at me. And that'll be whenever you want this weekend on Friday. You can go watch it and that'll be your thing, or listen to it, and that's just fine. Okay, so Hillary says she's pretty sure that it's a pattern from one of the major quilt magazines. Yeah, okay, and then Suzanne saying she gets buckets of inspiration from the quilts Julie Silber shares on her Facebook page. Also, you can go to her web page, and I adore Julie Silber. She has an excellent eye. She is not a quilter. She's been on TQS a couple times. She's a trader, she's a broker, and she knows stuff, okay? So, okay, and then Arden says there's some nice felts out there for people who are allergic to wool. Of course there are. Again, I'm sorry that I said something on Monday too. I went back and I watched it and I go, okay, I said that wrong. You're just going to get it from me. That's who you're dealing with live. All right, people, I'll see you Monday. I'm really excited. Like, why does this work? Why does this work? Amy takes us through all of this, and it was fascinating, and I love color, and I'm no longer afraid of color. But what did that take? 40 years. So there you go. Okay, everybody, thanks for hanging out. Have a great weekend. Check out Dee. Check out that podcast, and I will see you Monday and wrap up whatever you need to get done. Okay.